The Galactic Council chamber was buzzing with activity. Delegates from hundreds of worlds had gathered, their shapes and colors unlike anything seen on Earth. Some had dozens of eyes. Others moved in ways that seemed impossible, and every one of them carried the air of importance. Today was supposed to be just another session, a discussion about border security and trade disputes. But something in the air felt different, though no one could put a finger on it yet. Suddenly, the huge doors at the far end of the chamber opened. Every head turned automatically, a silent question running through the crowd. Who could possibly enter at this hour without an invitation? And then they saw them. Two figures walked in, calm and steady. They were humans, from Earth, a planet many species called a death world. The stories about humans had traveled far, whispered across the galaxy with awe and fear. Tales of survival, strength, and sheer unpredictability had earned humans a reputation that few dared to test. Some delegates stiffened at the sight. Some glanced at one another, as if silently asking if it was really them. The humans didn't rush or make a scene. They walked with a quiet confidence, their steps measured and deliberate. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't glare or flex their muscles. Yet, even in their calm, they carried a presence that made others uneasy. Every species in that chamber had learned sometimes the quietest beings were the most dangerous. Whispers started almost immediately. Delegates leaned toward each other, exchanging stories they had heard. They survived a planet that kills almost everything, one said in a low tone. They adapted to radiation that would incinerate most species, another added. And they don't fight the way we fight. Their strategies are unpredictable. The words were hushed, but they spread like wildfire. Threading through the council like an electric current dot, the humans stopped at the center of the chamber. Facing the council chair, they nodded politely, acknowledging the room without any show of arrogance. The chair, feeling the tension in the air, cleared their throat and tried to regain control. "Welcome," the chair said, though their voice carried a slight tremor. "You are not scheduled to attend today's session. May I ask why you are here?" The two humans exchanged a brief glance before one spoke. Their voice was calm, measured, and carried just enough authority to command attention. "We are here because there is a threat approaching your borders," the human said. "It is something your sensors have not detected, and your current plans will not stop it. We came to warn you." A ripple ran through the room. Some delegates scoffed, dismissing the claim. Some straightened, realizing that they had never seen anyone speak to the council this way before. They expected arrogance or demands, not a warning. The humans' calm, almost casual tone, combined with the weight of their presence, made the chamber feel smaller, almost fragile. For a moment, the council seemed frozen. Every delegate considered the humans with a mixture of fear, curiosity, and disbelief. This was Earth's doing. Humans were never ordinary. They were a species shaped by a planet that forced them to survive in impossible conditions. That survival had made them clever, resilient, and capable of things other species couldn't even imagine. And now, they were here in the heart of the council, in a room full of beings who prided themselves on control, logic, and foresight, and suddenly, they felt small. Even the chair struggled to maintain composure. They had faced aggressive species before, rebels, and even beings who bent physical laws. But there was something different about these humans. It wasn't their size, or their strength, or even their words. It was the calm certainty in everything they did. They didn't ask permission to be there. They didn't argue. They simply were, and that alone demanded attention. The humans glanced around, as if noting the uneasy glances, the whispered warnings, and the barely concealed fear. But they showed no malice, no threat. They were not here to fight. Not yet, at least. They were here to deliver a message that would shake the council more deeply than anything they had seen in centuries. And with that, the humans took their seats. The room, once filled with murmurs and whispers, fell into a tense silence. Every delegate realized that this session, meant to be routine, had already become something entirely different. Something historic. No one moved for a moment. No one dared speak. The humans sat, calm and alert, as if nothing in the galaxy could surprise them. Yet, the council was already unsettled, though they did not yet understand why. They would soon. The chamber was still filled with tension after the humans had quietly taken their seats. The other delegates couldn't stop staring. Many of them had heard stories about humans before, but seeing them in person was something else entirely. Their reputation as Deathworlders, the beings who survived conditions that would kill almost anyone, was no longer just a story. It was real, and the weight of that reality pressed down on everyone present. Whispers started again, soft at first, but spreading quickly. "They come from a planet where nothing survives easily," one delegate murmured. "They've lived in deserts hotter than our suns, survived storms that would tear a ship apart. They're different." Another delegate shook its head as if trying to deny the obvious. "Even so, they are here. In the council. Why? What could they want?" The two humans seemed completely aware of the attention, but they didn't react. They didn't glare, and they didn't bow or offer excuses. They just waited, calm and silent, as if the room's tension didn't touch them. That calm was unsettling. Every species in that chamber was used to power being shown loudly through displays of strength, intimidation, or technological might. But humans didn't do that. Their power was quiet, controlled, and it made everyone else uneasy because they could not measure it. One delegate, a tall being with translucent skin and 3 eyes, leaned toward its neighbor. "Do you see how calm they are? They don't even seem afraid of us." Its neighbor, a smaller scaly species, shivered despite the warm air in the chamber. "Fear? They are fear itself," it whispered, its voice barely audible. "We do not even know the limits of what they can do." The humans finally began to speak, and the room fell completely silent. Their voices were not loud or aggressive, but they carried a weight that was impossible to ignore. "We are here because there is a threat approaching the outer rim," one of them said. "It is something your sensors have not detected, and it is capable of destroying entire systems. We have come to make sure you understand the danger before it is too late." There were murmurs of disbelief. Some delegates looked at each other, confused, even annoyed. They were the Galactic Council. They were the experts. They had seen wars, invasions, and threats that could wipe out entire planets. Yet here were two humans, calmly telling them that they had missed something. That alone was almost impossible for many to accept. "You speak as if you know more than the council," one voice finally called out. It came from a delegate who had never been impressed by stories or rumors. "How can two beings from one planet understand a threat that we, with our combined intelligence, cannot detect?" The humans did not respond with anger. Instead, they shared what they had learned through simple explanation, showing evidence without unnecessary drama. Holographic projections appeared above the chamber floor, displaying fleets moving in ways that most sensors could not track, strange anomalies in space, and patterns of movement that were too fast and too precise for the Council's usual methods to detect. Delegates leaned closer to see, some of them whispering in disbelief. The humans explained clearly, calmly, step by step, without exaggeration. Every word carried authority because it was backed by evidence. But the calmness was also unnerving. Many delegates had never experienced a species that could be so powerful, yet so understated. Humans had a way of making fear quiet, but absolute. As the humans spoke, the room's atmosphere changed. What had started as curiosity, then disbelief, slowly shifted into a deep, creeping unease. Delegates began to realize that this wasn't a performance. The humans weren't trying to intimidate them for fun. They were not here to threaten or demand anything. They were here to give a warning, and it was one that no one could afford to ignore. The tall, three-eyed delegate finally broke the silence, its voice trembling slightly. You are saying that this threat is approaching now? The human nodded. Yes, soon it will be too late to act without losses. We are here to help you prepare before that moment comes. A ripple of tension spread through the chamber. Some delegates started arguing, as was typical, accusing the humans of exaggeration. Others debated among themselves, realizing that even if the warning was true, they were unprepared for such a threat. Every eye, every antenna, every sensory organ was now focused entirely on the humans. Yet despite all the attention, the humans remained calm. They did not raise their voices, they did not shift uncomfortably, and they did not show frustration. That calm confidence, combined with the undeniable evidence they presented, made every species in the room reconsider everything they thought they knew. For centuries, the Council had believed that they understood the limits of survival and adaptability in the galaxy. But here were two humans, showing them that their understanding was incomplete. Humans didn't just survive, they adapted, endured, and solved problems that most species couldn't even imagine facing. And now, the Council had to listen, whether they wanted to or not. The session continued, but it was no longer routine. Every species, even those skeptical at first, could feel the shift in the air. The humans were not merely representatives from a distant planet. They were examples of a force the galaxy had underestimated for centuries. And as the session went on, it became clear. This was a species that demanded attention, not through aggression, but simply by being who they were not by the end of that part of the meeting. Every delegate in the chamber understood one thing. The humans were more than just Deathworlders. They were something entirely different, unexpected, unmeasured, and terrifying in their quiet power. And the galaxy would never view Earth the same way again. The humans had been sitting quietly for a few minutes, allowing the Council to settle from their initial shock. But now, the weight of their presence became even clearer. Every species in the room realized that the humans were not here for politics or pride. They were here for a warning that no one could afford to ignore. The human delegate leaned forward slightly, and with a calm, clear voice, began to explain what they had discovered. We have detected a hostile fleet moving toward the outer rim of Council space, they said. It is large, fast, and unlike anything you have encountered before. Your current defenses will not stop it. This is not a threat you can negotiate with. It is a threat you must prepare for immediately. A murmur swept through the room. Some delegates exchanged glances, their multiple eyes widening in disbelief. Impossible, one said. Our sensors have not picked up anything. How can they be here before us? Another shook its head. We would have known if a fleet of that size were moving this close. We are the Council. We monitor every sector. The humans didn't argue. They didn't raise their voices or grow defensive. Instead, one of them raised a hand, and a holographic projection appeared above the chamber floor. The image showed countless ships moving in strange formations, like predators hunting silently across space. Their speed and coordination were unlike anything the Council had ever recorded. See for yourself, the human said. These ships move faster than your fastest scouts. Their formation adapts instantly. They are capable of bypassing conventional defenses with ease. If they reach Council space unchallenged, they will destroy entire systems before a coordinated response is possible. The room fell silent. Some delegates stared at the projection, unable to look away. Others whispered to each other in fear. What is this fleet? One asked. We have never seen anything like it. It moves like a single mind, not hundreds of independent ships. The humans continued, explaining what their sensors had detected over weeks of observation. They described the fleet's speed, the technology that allowed them to remain invisible to standard detection methods, and their patterns of attack. Every detail they provided was precise, backed by calculations and past examples. Their explanation left no room for doubt. Some delegates were furious. "You are trying to frighten us," one shouted. "We are the Council. We do not panic. We do not act on fear alone." The humans looked at the speaker calmly, their expression unreadable. "We are not asking you to panic," one said. "We are asking you to prepare. Acting early is not fear. It is survival." Others began to whisper to each other, their fear evident. "If they are correct," one said, "we have been blind. We have wasted time, assuming everything was safe. Entire systems could be lost before we even realized the danger." Another added, "And these humans, they have seen it. They have calculated it. They are telling us the truth." The council chamber had never felt so tense. Species who had argued, debated, and even fought with each other over centuries were now silent. All attention was on the humans. They were not raising weapons, demanding tribute, or threatening war. They were simply speaking the truth, and that truth was terrifying. The human delegate's voice remained steady, never rising, never faltering. "We know what this fleet is capable of. We have seen what it can do to planets that cannot defend themselves. Entire populations have been wiped out before anyone else even noticed the threat existed. We are here to make sure that does not happen to you." Some delegates began to lean forward in their seats, their fear giving way to urgent curiosity. "How do you know this?" one asked. "Have you fought them before?" The humans shook their head. "No, we have not engaged them directly, but we have survived long enough to study threats like this. We know how they operate, and we know what happens when unprepared systems face them." The holographic display changed, showing simulations of the fleet's attacks on unprotected planets. Delegates watched as entire cities were destroyed in seconds, fleets shredded in moments, and populations scattered or eliminated. The room was filled with shocked gasps and low murmurs. Even those who had doubted humans now realized that they had underestimated not only the threat, but the humans' ability to understand it. "Your usual defenses will not stop them," the human continued. "Missiles, shields, patrol fleets, these will fail if deployed without strategy. They are faster, smarter, and more coordinated than anything you have seen. To survive, you will need to rethink everything. You will need to adapt, just as humans have had to adapt to survive on our own planet." A few delegates began to argue quietly among themselves. "We cannot admit that we were blind," one said. "We are the Council. We are supposed to know everything. How could humans know something we did not?" Another whispered back, "Maybe we never could. Maybe humans see things differently. Maybe we were never meant to survive this without them." The humans did not respond to the whispers. They did not need to. Their calm presence, combined with the undeniable evidence of the fleet, had already made the point. They were not here to prove themselves. They were here to prevent disaster. And in that moment, every species in the room realized that the humans' reputation as Deathworlders was more than justified. Humans did not just survive dangerous environments, they understood them. They anticipated threats that no one else could even imagine out as the session continued. The humans outlined potential strategies, ways the Council could detect the fleet earlier, and how to prepare defenses that could actually stand a chance. Every word was carefully measured, practical, and precise. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was exaggerated. And yet, every word carried the weight of authority. By the end of this part of the session, the Council could no longer ignore the truth. The humans had done more than warn them. They had made it clear that the galaxy was a dangerous place, and the usual arrogance of the Council would not be enough to keep them safe. Fear mixed with respect in the chamber. The humans had arrived as outsiders, uninvited and unexpected. And now, the council understood that their presence was not just important, it might be essential for survival. In that moment, a quiet understanding passed through the room. Humans were more than survivors. They were a species that faced impossible odds and emerged stronger every time. They were a species that saw danger before it arrived, and that saw solutions when no one else could. And for the first time, every delegate realized that the humans' calm, quiet presence was more terrifying than any weapon or warship ever could be. The humans had been speaking for some time now, and the tension in the council chamber had grown almost unbearable. Every delegate, regardless of species, had learned to recognize power in its usual forms: military might, advanced technology, numbers, but the humans were showing a different kind of power. It was quiet, calm, and utterly undeniable. The human delegate gestured toward the holographic display in the center of the chamber. This time, the projection showed something different. Humans themselves, in environments that would have killed almost anyone else. The delegates gasped as they saw engineers working on ships in radiation storms, humans walking through gravity fields far stronger than their own bodies could endure, and teams repairing equipment while surrounded by conditions no other species would dare enter. "This is what we can survive," the human said plainly. "This is what allows us to understand threats that others cannot even detect. We do not rely only on technology or numbers. We rely on adaptability, endurance, and strategy." The room went silent. Even the council chair, who had faced countless crises, felt a chill. Some delegates could not hide their fear. "Impossible," one whispered. "How can any species survive that?" Another delegate shook its head, its limbs trembling slightly. "They aren't exaggerating. We have heard of humans surviving extreme environments, but seeing it, it's beyond anything we imagined." The humans continued without raising their voices. They explained, step by step, how humans had learned to survive the deadliest conditions on Earth. They described deserts that could boil water in seconds, storms that ripped through mountains, and oceans that could swallow ships whole. They explained that surviving these environments did not make them violent. It made them clever, resourceful, and unafraid of danger. One of the humans leaned forward slightly. "We understand threats differently because we have lived through impossible situations. We anticipate danger, we adapt, and we respond faster than most species can even think to react. What you are seeing here is not bravado. It is survival." Delegates began whispering among themselves again. "They do not need weapons to intimidate," one said. "Their very presence shows us what real danger looks like." Another added, "And yet, they are calm. They are not here to fight us. They are here to warn us." The humans then showed simulations of hypothetical scenarios, attacks on planets with weak defenses, fleets unable to respond in time, entire populations at risk. But the simulations also showed humans surviving situations that no one else could. The contrast was stark. The council had always believed that technology and numbers were the ultimate form of power. The humans were proving that adaptability, strategy, and endurance could surpass all of it. Some delegates began to question themselves. "We rely on machines and calculations," one said quietly. "We trust our sensors more than our own instincts. But these humans, they trust themselves. They trust what they can do, and they have the experience to back it up." Another murmured, "That is why they are feared. Not because they attack recklessly, but because they survive when no one else can. They turn impossible situations into advantages." The human continued to speak, explaining that the galaxy's greatest threats often came not from warships or weapons, but from environments and situations no one else could anticipate. A fleet can be destroyed, a planet can be defended, but unexpected conditions will always test your limits. We prepare for the unexpected because we have no choice. Our survival depends on it. Delegates who had initially been skeptical were now visibly unsettled. The council chamber, usually a place of order and debate, felt charged with unease. The humans' calm authority was difficult to resist. Their words were not loud, their gestures not aggressive, yet their message was clear. Underestimate humans at your own peril. The chair finally spoke, trying to regain some control. Your demonstrations are remarkable, but you must understand that not all species can survive as you do. How do you expect us to respond? How can we prepare if our own limits are lower than yours? The human responded without hesitation. We do not expect anyone to become like us. We only ask that you understand what you are facing. Use your strengths and recognize the weaknesses in your current strategies. Adapt, prepare. The galaxy will not wait for anyone who is unready. A ripple ran through the chamber. Some delegates began to take notes. Others whispered strategies to one another. The room was alive with activity, but beneath it all ran a quiet, growing respect for the humans. Fear was still present, yes, but it was mixed with admiration. Humans were more than Deathworlders. They were a species shaped by survival, able to turn impossible situations into manageable ones. The humans concluded their presentation with one final point. We do not thrive because we are stronger than others, one said. We survive because we have learned to endure, to think ahead, and to act when others hesitate. That is why we are here today, to ensure that no species underestimates what is coming. We do not act out of aggression. We act out of necessity. The chamber remained quiet for a long moment. No one spoke. Every delegate was processing the information, the evidence, and the humans themselves. The two Deathworlders had entered the council chamber as outsiders, uninvited, and yet they had left an undeniable mark on every species present. Slowly, a few delegates began to nod, a subtle sign of acknowledgement. Others were still fearful, still skeptical, but no one could deny the truth in what they had seen. Humans were not only capable of facing the impossible, they were capable of preparing others to face it as well. By the end of the session, the council had gained a new understanding of humanity. Humans were feared, not because they sought to dominate, but because they had survived everything the galaxy could throw at them and had come out stronger. They were practical, strategic, and above all, ready. The humans left the chamber quietly, without fanfare or declaration. But their presence lingered in the minds of every delegate. What had been fear at first glance had transformed into a mixture of respect and awe. The galaxy would never underestimate humans again, and the council would never look at survival or at Earth the same way. The tension in the council chamber had grown to an almost unbearable level. Every delegate present knew that what the humans were presenting was serious, but the truth of it had begun to sink in fully only now. It was one thing to hear warnings. It was another to realize the council itself had been blind to the threat until humans pointed it out. For some, that realization was terrifying. For others, it was humiliating. The humans, however, remained calm. They did not raise their voices. They did not glare at skeptics, and they did not attempt to dominate the conversation. Instead, they spoke with the quiet authority of those who had seen worse and survived. Every word carried the weight of experience, not pride. There is no time for hesitation, one of the humans said, their voice firm but controlled. The fleet is approaching faster than conventional detection methods can track. Every moment of delay reduces your options. Acting early is the only way to protect your systems. The council chair, sensing the rising panic among delegates, tried to regain control. "We understand your concern," the chair said, though their voice betrayed a tremor. "But some of our members are skeptical. How can we be certain your information is accurate?" The human delegate smiled slightly, though not in a mocking way. "We have provided data, projections, and simulations. These are not guesses. You can verify them yourselves with your sensors, if you choose. But the fleet moves in ways most species cannot even anticipate. Ignoring this will be costly. A murmur spread through the chamber. Some delegates leaned forward, curiosity mixed with fear. Others whispered to their neighbors, debating in low tones. "We cannot ignore them," one said. "Their data is precise. Their experience shows they understand the threat better than we do." Another replied, "Even so. They are humans. Can we trust them to guide us?" The humans did not answer the question directly. They did not need to. Their presence, their calm demeanor, and the evidence they had provided spoke louder than words. They were not asking to be trusted, they were demanding attention. And they were providing the knowledge necessary to survive. One of the humans gestured toward the holographic display, which now showed detailed simulations of defensive strategies. Planets, fleets, and defense grids were highlighted, showing weak points that could be exploited if the Council did not act quickly. "Here," the human said, pointing to a section of the projection, "is where most systems will fail if unprepared. Adjusting your defenses here and here will give you a chance. Delaying even a few hours could be disastrous." Delegates stared at the projection, some shaking their limbs in disbelief. "We never realized these weaknesses existed," one said quietly. "Our sensors never picked this up. How did humans see this?" The other human spoke then, their voice calm but firm. "We survive because we anticipate the unexpected. Your technology is strong, but it is built to defend against what you expect. We have learned to anticipate what is beyond expectation. That skill allows us to survive threats others cannot detect in time." Whispers filled the room again, this time with a mix of fear and admiration. "They do not just survive," one delegate said. "They understand survival in a way we never could." Another added, "And they are offering their guidance, not as conquerors, but as allies." Some of the more skeptical delegates, however, were still uneasy. "How do we know they are not exaggerating?" one asked. "Humans are known for daring solutions. How can we rely on their judgment?" The humans did not respond with frustration or anger. Instead, they shared more concrete examples of their experience. Holographic images displayed humans navigating deadly environments, massive storms, extreme temperatures, and high radiation areas that would have killed any other species. They explained, calmly and methodically, how humans adapted to survive, how they anticipated danger, and how they responded with speed and precision. One of the humans leaned slightly forward, voice steady. "We do not rely on brute force alone. We rely on observation, adaptation, and strategy. That is what allows us to face threats others cannot even perceive. That is what allows us to offer you solutions before the danger is upon you." The council chamber had become completely silent. Even those who had initially doubted humans now watched intently. Some delegates began taking notes, their fears slowly shifting into determination. "Perhaps we underestimated them," one said softly. "Not their intentions, but their capability. They survive because they think differently." Other delegates murmured agreement. "They have experience we cannot replicate. They are offering knowledge that could save us. We ignore them at our peril." The humans then explained step by step the adjustments the Council could make to prepare for the fleet. They described coordinating fleets across multiple systems, reinforcing vulnerable planets, and detecting movement patterns that traditional sensors would miss. Every suggestion was practical and precise, backed by evidence. They spoke in a calm, steady tone, never raising their voice, never forcing anyone to comply. And yet, their authority was absolute. Some delegates began arguing among themselves quietly. "We cannot act without consulting our own experts," one said. "But if we wait too long," another interrupted, We cannot afford to wait. Humans have seen this threat and understand it. We must act immediately. The humans remained silent during the debate, observing the council's responses. Their calm, unshakable presence served as a constant reminder of the stakes. They had walked into this chamber as outsiders, uninvited and unexpected. And yet, by staying composed and providing undeniable evidence, they had become the most credible voices in the room. The chair finally nodded. "Very well. We will consider your recommendations carefully, but understand that implementation will take time. Many systems are unprepared for this scale of threat." The humans did not show impatience. They simply replied, "Time is limited. Every moment counts. Acting decisively, even if imperfectly, is better than hesitation. That is the difference between survival and destruction." A few delegates whispered among themselves, clearly shaken, but also inspired. "They are right," one said. "Even if we cannot act perfectly, waiting will ensure failure. Humans think in ways we cannot match, and that gives them an edge." By the end of the session, the council had begun to shift. Fear was still present, yes, but it had started to turn into respect. Humans were not here to threaten. They were here to guide, to offer knowledge, and to prepare the galaxy for a danger no one else had fully recognized. The humans left the chamber quietly, without fanfare. They did not demand gratitude, nor did they boast. But their presence lingered in the minds of every delegate. They had arrived as outsiders, causing fear and uncertainty, and yet they had left a profound mark. The council now understood that humans were unlike any other species in the galaxy. They survived impossible conditions, anticipated threats before anyone else, and could offer guidance that might save countless lives. In that moment, a quiet understanding passed through the council chamber. Humans were not simply Deathworlders. They were a force of endurance, strategy, and insight. They were respected because of what they could survive, not because of what they could destroy. And the galaxy would never underestimate them again. The tension in the council chamber had grown heavier with every passing moment. Some delegates were visibly shaken, shifting in their seats, their multiple limbs twitching nervously. Others whispered to one another, exchanging hurried glances. The humans, however, remained calm, seated with an unshakable composure. Their quiet authority seemed to dominate the room. Even without a raised voice or threatening gesture, one of the humans leaned slightly forward, pointing at the holographic projections that filled the space above the chamber floor. This time, the display showed detailed scenarios of how the approaching fleet could exploit weak points in planetary defenses. Cities on distant worlds flickered in red, fleets dissolved in seconds, and populations scattered in chaos. The effect was chilling. Delegates who had once scoffed at the warning now felt the weight of the truth pressing down on them. "The threat is unlike anything you have faced before," the human said calmly. "Your current fleets, your defensive shields, and your sensor arrays will not be enough. Acting now, even imperfectly, will give you a chance to survive. Hesitation will not." A murmur spread through the chamber. Some delegates leaned forward in disbelief. Others whispered urgently among themselves. "We cannot ignore this," one said. "They have provided exact coordinates and strategies. This is real." Another added, "But they are humans. Can we trust them?" The humans did not respond to the question. They did not need to. Their presence, their calm certainty, and the undeniable evidence they presented spoke louder than words. The room seemed to shrink around them, every delegate acutely aware that ignoring the humans could mean disaster. "Look here," the other human continued, gesturing to another part of the hologram. "These points are vulnerable. Without immediate reinforcement, fleets will fail. Planets will be lost. Systems will collapse. Time is the only variable you cannot recover once it is gone. The council chair attempted to assert control, though their voice trembled slightly. We understand your urgency, but many of our members doubt these projections. How can we be certain? How can we be sure your calculations are accurate? The human's reply was quiet but firm. You can verify the data yourselves. Your sensors are capable, but the fleet's movement is subtle. You may not see it in time unless you adjust your expectations and act decisively. Do not rely on what you expect to happen. Prepare for what is actually happening. Several delegates exchanged uneasy looks. They speak the truth, one said softly. They understand things we cannot. We cannot ignore this. Another whispered, and yet, they are not threatening us. They are offering guidance. The humans then began outlining specific steps the council could take to prepare. Holographic markers highlighted planetary defense grids, fleet coordination points, and sensor nodes that could be repositioned to detect the fleet sooner. Every instruction was practical, precise, and clearly derived from experience rather than theory. One skeptical delegate, a tall being with segmented limbs, finally spoke. We cannot follow blindly. Humans are known for boldness and improvisation. How do we know these steps will work? The human did not falter. We are not asking you to act blindly. We are offering observations and strategies based on what we have seen and survived. Your technology is strong, but it cannot anticipate the unexpected. We can. That is why we are here. Another delegate murmured to their neighbor. They survive what no one else can. They anticipate what no one else can. And they are giving us knowledge that could save countless lives. Some delegates began debating quietly, but the tone had shifted. Fear had not disappeared. It had evolved into focused attention. The human's calm authority had forced a new kind of respect, one that edged out skepticism. Even those still unsure could not ignore the growing realization. They were witnessing a species that understood survival in ways no other species could. The humans went on, presenting more detailed defensive simulations. They described how to reinforce planetary shields, how to coordinate fleets across multiple star systems, and how to anticipate the fleet's unpredictable movements. Every recommendation was backed by examples and logic, presented with the clarity of someone who had faced impossible odds and lived. A few delegates whispered urgently. We cannot delay, one said. Even if our systems are not perfect, inaction will guarantee failure. Another replied, they have seen this. They understand it. That gives them credibility we cannot ignore. The humans remained silent as the council debated. Their presence alone was enough to guide the conversation, to steer it toward preparation rather than dismissal. The chamber had become a place not of politics, but of urgent planning. Every delegate knew that the survival of countless worlds might depend on whether they listened. Finally, the chair spoke again. Very well. We will consider your strategies carefully, but understand that implementation across multiple systems will take time. Some defenses cannot be adjusted instantly. The human nodded. We understand. But time is the only thing you cannot recover. Acting decisively, even with incomplete resources, is better than waiting for perfection. Delay will be costly. The murmur of agreement spread. Delegates who had initially doubted humans now spoke quietly to each other, acknowledging the wisdom in the guidance. Even if we cannot act perfectly, one said, we cannot afford to wait. These humans see things differently, and that difference could save us. By the end of the session, a profound shift had occurred. The humans, who had entered as outsiders, uninvited and unexpected, had become the most credible voices in the room. Fear was still present, but it had transformed into a deep respect. The council had learned something invaluable. Humans were not just survivors, they were teachers, strategists, and guides in a galaxy that often underestimated danger. The humans left the chamber quietly. without fanfare or show. But their presence lingered in the minds of every delegate. They had arrived as outsiders, caused uncertainty and fear, and left a lasting impression. The galaxy would never underestimate humans again. They were more than Deathworlders. They were a force shaped by survival, adaptability, and insight. And that understanding would change the way the Council viewed Earth forever.